Hi everyone, it's Rosalie here from The Purifying Place. Today we're talking about fitting in. If you're someone who has never truly fit in or who has felt unseen or unheard or just like the odd one out, the black sheep of the family, then this video is for you. What is the true cost of fitting in and what is not fitting in really mean for you? If you're interested in this, then continue watching. I am someone who has always just felt like I've never truly fit in, and I am the black sheep of my family, and I always thought it was just some type of weird curse that I didn't fit in. Let me know if you can relate to this because um, I would, attempt to connect and I would attempt to say what I think. And it was met with sometimes a lot of anger or frustration or annoyance from people. And I always took that as a sign that something was wrong with me. And, my whole life, I've internalized this idea that I'm different and that makes me weird and odd and at a disadvantage to other people. And, as children, we just long to be seen. We long to be loved. We long to be accepted for who we are. And, you know, as children, also, you want to be accepted by your friends, especially your family members. And this can be a really painful process, right? To feel rejected or like an outsider in your own community, in your own family, in your own school. And, growing up, my parents were extremely strict about who we were able to play with or spend time with. And so I was never allowed to like have friends from school or go to their houses or play at the park with them or have play dates or anything like that. And so a lot of the time I was just, if I could on the weekends, play with some of my cousins, but a lot of the time I was um, by myself in my room, journaling, writing poetry, making art in nature, with my pets. And so I think there's this isolation period that looking back at it, I realize now just how important that was for me to know who I truly am. It was this beginning point of beginning to dig deeper beneath the surface. And I truly believe God has divinely orchestrated our lives for us, and God is ultimately us, the highest vantage point, the ultimate creator of all of us. And so things that we think may have been hard or unfortunate, with more conscious awareness, we can see them through the lens of wholeness. We can see them through the lens of being a gift. And now I realize, now that I'm a mom and a teacher myself, with my children, my daughter and also my students, I see the importance of being um, yourself, your authentic self. And so fitting in requires you to fit the mold or requires you to conform a lot of the time in this culture that we live in. And if we don't conform, we're rejected, we're made to be the problem, we're told we're too shiny or too big or too loud or asking for too much. And so very early on, children, myself included, when I was a child, learned to dim their light, learn to not speak the truth, learn to be inauthentic. And so the cost of that then is losing who we are at a very early age. And so I think that's why, especially with spiritual work, inner work, personal development, um, seeking God. it ultimately leads to returning to who you truly are at a soul level, which is what I help my clients do through the purifying place. And I'm beginning now to see, now that I have done so much inner work and development, I realize there's still that aspect of me that doesn't feel like I fit in. There's still this part of me that is second guessing my knowing, my truth, my skill, and my gifts that I have to offer because of the conditioned aspect of ourselves who were made to feel less than because we were different. And there's this threshold that you reach where, once you begin to excavate and really laser in on who you are, there, and I think I'm at this threshold where I've learned that if you are going to fully step into your authenticity and your gifts, then you have to be okay with being hated, being disliked, and persecuted. Like in scripture, it says, when you know, really truly know God and know who you are going to be a target for hatred, just like Jesus was. And it's interesting how, on a subconscious level, we know that. And so we don't talk too loudly or don't speak out and um, are agreeable or people pleasing. And I think, especially on this journey of deepening into my relationship with God and sharing my spirituality online, it has felt very scary. It has felt very, and I realized the underlying fear of that is truly being seen and then rejected. Although now I realize once you're rejected, that is an opportunity for you to fully own and deepen into who you are and what you know to be true. Because if someone rejects you or criticizes you or spews something at you and you immediately conform to take it back, then were you truly embodied in what you said? Were you truly embodied in what you in your values and your truth and what you were really speaking up for? And so I know this word test comes up a lot, but it's an opportunity and a portal for us to step through that and claim that version of ourselves that is truly unapologetically ourselves, fully confident, fully capable, and whole. And that doesn't mean we never make mistakes or we um, don't ask for help. That means we truly, fully surrender to the divine will of God. And we act in accordance to live out that will here on earth and have the full faith and trust and surrender in that knowing that we are held by God. And it's interesting how, I have realized the cost of wanting to fit in is renouncing all of that, is renouncing my truth, is renouncing my authenticity, is again abandoning myself. And how many times have so many of us abandoned ourselves to receive the love from a parent, receive the love from a sibling or a friend or colleagues or recognition? And I realize I am no longer willing to do that. At some point, we have to make a conscious decision to not abandon ourselves again, to live in full alignment and authenticity with our soul truth at that deepest level that we can, and continue to deepen into that truth and expand our consciousness so that we can begin to know ourselves even more and know God even more in the process. And when we allow ourselves to do that, then we are truly, truly free. Because fitting in costs you your freedom. It costs you your love. It costs you your sovereignty. It costs you your, you know, your passions. And I don't know about you, but I realize I'm not willing to do that anymore. And I think just like with anything, once we claim something and we're moving in that direction, all these different opportunities come up in our life for us to deepen into that, into all aspects of our lives, to have full integrity. And so for me, that was showing up online and sharing my message, sharing it with the people who asked, who I know in person, and just being more fully who I am all the time and not just selectively. And so it's a process and it's a journey. And I I realized, I was watching a YouTube video earlier today where someone was speaking about this and said, like, if you're not fully um ready to be hated or disliked, then you're not ready to step into your full power and your full authenticity and have the abundance and the goodness that comes with that, because people's hatred is really just a reflection of our own self-hatred. And so when we have a reaction still to those things, there's still something within us that's allowing that to happen. And it's an indicator to us to look within and say, what do I feel like this says about me? And where am I still feeling unwhole? And how can I return to wholeness even while this is happening? And how can I accept this with the least amount of resistance, with no resistance? And that is the work then to fully accept ourselves even deeper. And it's interesting because when I think about this energetically, when you're vibrating from that truth, when you're putting that out, there's something um that's gonna come back. What's that? That's that law. It's like um every force has an equal and opposite reaction or something like that. It's like, okay, so if you're putting that out there, then something is going to come back to you that's equal that, and it could be numerous things, right? And are you ready to? It's just natural to expect it, basically. It's instead of like infusing it with judgment and self-doubt and criticism for yourself and say, maybe this is a sign I shouldn't do this anymore, maybe I was wrong, and all the second guess and doubting, you can just see it as what comes with the territory and recognize that when you can move without this emotional charge and hold it with awareness and still choose your movements with intention in alignment with God's will, your highest will for your life, then you win. That is success, right? Because as soon as you let hatred or people's comments or opinions or criticism dictate your being, you have lost your freedom. You have lost the sovereignty of that, right? And you can always regain it. So it just becomes this fortification, this practice, and this process to hone that skill. And I truly think like that's where I'm at right now, because I notice like in my life and in my business, I've just kind of felt a little bit discharged, like a lack of like energy or charge. And I thought, what is happening here? you know? Am I and then it kind of led to self-doubting and this and that, and what do I know to be true? And I realized like it's it's none of that. And it's funny because I was driving to work and I saw this hawk like just running by the front gate where we live, and a crow like fully coming after it, like attacking it. And I've never really seen them that close to the ground because they're really close to the ground. Usually I see hawks like flying up high and then crows trying to attack it, but the hawk is just like, no, 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 I'm going up. Oh my gosh, it's so interesting because I mean, definitely am in tune with animals and nature, and whenever I see something that's kind of obvious in my field, then I know it's like a message. And so I realized that same day when I got to work, a coworker had emailed me and CC'd my boss about something that was completely untrue about me. And I was so triggered by it. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm not going to respond to it. And then I realized, like, wait a minute, why wouldn't I respond to it, you know? And as soon as I could recenter myself, recenter who I truly am at a soul level in alignment with God, right? Seek the kingdom first. Once I did that from that wholeness and that held place, I responded with clarity and clearness and and very concise. And soon after, he he responded with an apology, and he said he clarified things and all these things. And I realized, like, oh my gosh, that was just another. It kind of reminded me of the crow and the hawk, right? The crow was like attacking, but the hawk in this instance was try to run away. But really, what hawks do is they just fly higher until the eagle's like, or until the crow just kind of falls away, right? So I realized in this case, I could there's one way I could have responded, like the old version of me, or the old version of me wouldn't even respond at all, would have just like been annoyed and like never said anything and held a grudge and all this stuff. But this new version of me has the capacity to hold this regulated feeling and neutralize it and move it through and alchemize it into power and self trust and confidence. And so I responded in a way that embodies that. And I realized, like, oh my gosh, yes, this is the sign from the eagle, from the hawk, from one, or the hawk and the crow, and what I've been like feeling from God. And then something else happened that same day where one of my students like completely did something like without me knowing and then lied about something and told us another staff member that I said this and this and this, which I never did. And again, I was so triggered by it. And I realized, like, oh gosh, wait a minute. Why do I care so much about what people think? Like, and I realized this is another way to, another signal to me that's fortifying the spirit within me, that where it's like, um, I have to be okay with being misunderstood. I have to be okay with people saying things about me that are not true. And I have to sit in the power and knowing of who I truly am without having to prove anything, including who I am. And if I can just move from that wholeness and that space and that sovereign power within that comes from God, when you move in alignment with God, then I don't have to prove myself to anyone. And so the charge of that emotion is released, and that energy can be used with intention in alignment of divine will. And that moves the needle forward forever in your favor. And I realized, oh my gosh, this is just more. And so these things just become more fuel for the fire that is ablaze within you. And after that, I just felt so good after that day. I realized there's just, as a recovering people pleaser and someone who's abandoned myself for a long time growing up because I was the black sheep of the family. I didn't want to ruffle feathers. I wanted to please everyone. I wanted people to accept me, blah, 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 blah. I, I realized this is part of my divine assignment is to move through that. And yes, I have already have. And these things are popping up to truly as portals for me to really deepen into that embodiment of what I have learned and what I have claimed to become. Because now I can just claim it. Whereas the old me would have been triggered, would have been bent out of shape, would have acted a totally different way. This new version and higher consciousness version of me is totally responding in a different way. Not reacting, responding. And yes, I might have reacted at the beginning, but I'm not even as hard on myself as I was in the past, where I would have been like, oh, I did it again. I hate myself. Why did I do that? I was just aware of it. I acknowledged it. I accepted it. I allowed it. to teach me, and then I moved in a different way. And that is the process. And so I'm realizing this is another sign for me to just come fully alive and online and in my presence with what I'm meant to share with the world. And if you're on this journey, if you have felt like you've never fit in, maybe this is your assignment. Maybe this is part of your process of relinquishing the self doubt and being able to fully step into who you are without the need of validation from others, whether it's positive validation or negative validation or negative attention, right? It's a way for us to fortify who we are without the outside dictating who we are on the inside. And it's when we truly step into the deepest aspect of our soul that's one with God, one with all that is, and move from that place. So we move from the inside out as truly empowered sovereign beings through God. And I think, if anything, this has taught me to just continue to be grateful, because as hard as some of this journey has been, it's been a beautiful process, and it feels so good to arrive at this point with the awareness and the consciousness to know that you have choice and to be able to choose that in alignment with God's will as the highest will and the highest awareness and highest frequency for us possible here on earth. And I'm realizing, if I share my message, if I share who I am, if I show up authentically, and people are like puzzled by it or don't understand it or think I'm weird or think I'm awful or crazy or whatever it is, I realize I can just let that run off of my aura like water off a duck's back, because I'm not here to prove or convince anyone. I'm here to live, and we're all here to live truly, authentically as we are, as God made us to be, and follow the divine assignment that we were given. And when I think of that, I feel like no wonder God made me this way. No wonder God made me to not fit in all these places. There was nothing ever truly wrong with me. It was I wasn't accepting who I am. And now that I am ready to, and now that I have, it makes sense why I don't vibe with anyone or everyone. I'm not meant to. Because when I think of the status quo of the world, am I truly meant to vibrate on that energy with everybody? No. There's some of us who, and this is not from an egotistical standpoint, this is from a deep knowing of who you truly are. This is an understanding of and an acceptance of truth, because it doesn't mean that people will not get there themselves. Everybody is returning, everybody is coming back to wholeness, everybody is one with God. Although there are some of us who have the awareness now, who are awake now. And I've realized this, when I can move in that alignment and that place and that frequency and emit that into the world, I have attracted soul aligned relationships, ones that have been deeper than anything else I've ever experienced in my life. And so, even though this has been a very lonely path, I'm realizing it's not, I've never truly been alone. And this is when loneliness ends. Because when you truly accept who you are and live in that alignment, not only do you not feel alone because you know who you are, you know your connection with God, you know who you are yourself, that frequency and authenticity begins to attract people who are a match for that. And so yes, the cost of fitting in and not fitting in might be certain family members, certain friends you've had for a long time, people from your high school or whatever, like colleagues. But know that it's not, that it's all for your highest good. Know it and accept it and trust it. Trust God, trust yourself, trust your soul, and allow yourselves to be open to receiving new relationships. Because now I've realized I have so much support in my life from my husband, from my personal trainer, from my coach, from a mentor, from people, my colleagues at school, my students, and my clients, and my um, family members, my loved ones. There's just so much support. And I think sometimes we can't truly see what's in front of us if we're not truly seeing ourselves and accepting ourselves. And I hope this message and this video reminds you to make peace with not fitting in and make peace with who you are and accept who you are and recognize just because you're being shunned or left out or disregarded or whatever it might be, you don't have to make that a story about you. You can sit in the knowing of who you truly are and make a conscious choice to not abandon yourself and stay authentic to you and to your path and live in accordance with that will, divine will, your highest timeline for you on this earth in this lifetime. And remember that, recenter yourself in that, and trust that that process and choosing you over and over and over and again will just lead to miracles, lead to your most beautiful life here on earth. And that is my wish for you. That is my wish for everyone. And if this video helped, let me know. I hope you enjoyed it. I enjoyed just talking about it. This time I was normally I like write something out, but this time I was like, I'm just gonna go off the cuff and like I haven't been on YouTube in a while, but just talk about something that's been on my mind lately. So if you're still here at the end, thanks so much for listening, and I'll catch you later.